we are going to talk about today a bunch of sort of the cool and weird and interesting stuff that influenced Night in the Woods, and our weird obsession with punk music and neat narrative experiences and movies and the games that we play.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Scott. Night in the Woods is the first game we ever worked on. In 2013, in June of 2013, I had been doing independent animation and kind of illustration for a while and making dumb jokes on Twitter. These are both two important things. And Alec Holoka, I don't know why I just blanked on his last name.
That's okay. You called him something else for a long time,
He's
didn't
like,
you?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I've gotten his name right.
Somebody had gotten his last name wrong for years.
Oh, okay. Halanku. But Alec just tweeted at me, "Hey, I like your art and you do funny jokes on Twitter. Do you want to make a video game?" And I was like, okay. Like I was kind of a contract artist and just doing freelance stuff. And I'd always want to make a game since I was a kid. But like making a game is one of those things where it's like I know people knew how to do it, but I'd never been exposed to like coding, or I didn't have my own computer until I was like in my 20s that wasn't from a garage sale. And so it was one of those things like I know people go to the moon and it involves computers and like there's math and people like point at like heroically at like whiteboards with equations, but I didn't know how to do that either. So like so I was like, oh cool, like that sounds like fun. And so we kicked around some ideas for a little while, and it was kind of like very artsy and very kind of like serene, and like I think I've joked before, it was like humming obelisks and like a silent protagonist because it was 2013 and that's just what you did in indie games if you wanted to make something artsy. And so but we weren't like super sold on the idea. And so one night I was watching Return of the Living Dead.
So let's actually go Kickstarter first.
Okay.
Because we're after Kickstarter. Kickstarter was November.
Yeah, that was October 22nd to November 22nd, I believe, of 2013. We didn't have any money, and we were in debt. And Alec was like, "Oh, well, we should get for this game. We're going to work on Unity, and Unity, I forget how much it cost back then,
like
$7,000." And I don't know. And whatever it was, we didn't have the money for it. And so Alec said, "Oh, hey, you should do a Kickstarter. We should do one." And I was like, "No one's going to care about our game. No one's going to donate to our Kickstarter or anything." And
this is a common theme for like 3.5 years.
Yeah.
No one's going to care about our game.
Do we have any Kickstarter backers in the house?
Anyone?
Hey, these are the heroes.
Hey, that Kickstarter update's coming out next week. I totally forgot that this was the last weekend of September. But hey, thanks for backing our game and stuff. So we didn't think anyone was going to care about it or anything. Like I said, it was our first game, and then we made a trailer. Alec made a really good song for it, and we just put it up, and it hit its goal. It's very low goal. It was like $60,000, which is a lot, but not enough to make a video game of this sort for 3.5 years. A bunch of people working full time and stuff, but we hit that in 26 hours, which was cool and scary and neat at the time. We ended up pulling in over $200K, which is a lot, but not enough to make a video game like that full time.
Still not enough.
Yeah, still not enough. Video games are expensive if you want to live while you're making them.
Alec had sent over the Kickstarter beforehand and was just like, "Hey Adam, what do you think?" And Adam like came running out of the studio after like the trailer had popped up and was like, "Beck, you got to come and see what Alec's working on." And I came running in because I'm like, "Why are you so excited? What the hell's going on? And what is this beautiful music I'm hearing?" And it's the first time I've ever seen a trailer that my first thought, and I yelled it, I was like, "Who the hell is making a game for me?" I am not the typical demographic of a gamer. At that point, I wasn't technically 100% even in the industry. And it was like that Insta, like, who's he working with? Where do these colors come from? Who is using these colors in a game? Like, how is this possible?
We invented the colors.
Oh my gosh. Basically, yeah.
Orange.
In games.
Oh, that was you?
Fall colors in games. Scott invented them. And we were backers. Like, Adam and I were just regular old backers at that point. But after you guys hit you had to come up with stretch goals.
Yeah, which we didn't want to do because we were watching everyone else at that time. We were that was like the big kind of Kickstarter gold rush, and we were watching people just promising
insane
ridiculous
things.
thing, like we're gonna found our own nation and name it after a backer or something, and like this, like they were hyper extending their projects, like, and so I think we had like 2 backer things, and it was just to get a couple other people doing smaller things for, including Adam was gonna help us make this game that ended up being Demon Tower.
Yeah, the game within a game.
Yeah,
and
the
Adam's
game
like,
within
yeah,
a game.
sure, whatever. I'll put together this thing, which was a much smaller game during the Kickstarter.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
just how it
everything
goes.
just got bigger.
Everything got bigger as we went, but we didn't do the stretch goals, which is good. And I remember that alone was newsworthy at the time. I think it was Penny Arcade back when they
That
did.
used to be when like Adam
when they
used
did
to
journalism.
Yeah, and Adam used to tweet anything Adam would tweet was like a news article back in those days, because I was closer to like Cannibal, like back when he made that. So yeah, it was just weird.
Yeah. So like people were like,
So
Night in the
weird.
Woods refuses stretch goals, and we're like, is that good? Like we think that's a responsible, good idea.
Yeah.
But people are like, why would you do that? Why not promise that extend your game 5 or 6 times and bring it out for the Ouya?
Finji came on afterwards. So a funny thing happened. They like Night in the Woods, like obviously had a successful Kickstarter. We were super excited for Alec because we didn't actually know these 2 yet. We're like, that's awesome. And Adam's like, I'm going to be making this weird game. That's cool. Whatever. At that point, we had like infants at home, so some of this is like a vague memory. But about, I don't know, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, it was like in December, right after the Kickstarter, Nick Sutner, who is a dev relations person at Sony, called up and was like, hey, we'd really love you on Sony. I'd love to play your game. And Alec and Scott just kind of started laughing because they live in 2 different countries, and there was no game. There was a trailer.
We had mocked up the street.
Yep,
Thank you.
there was some mock-ups. There was no game, and Nick's like, when's this coming out? I would really love to have this. And there was just like, I remember talking to Alec and just like giggles, like, there's not a game. And then the panic of like, oh my God, who's going to put this game out on console? This is really cool, but who the hell is going to sign those contracts? And Adam and I had already published like Aquaria for iOS, and we had done some like smaller like mobile publishing. We were in the process of switching from mobile to more diversified platforms because the mobile free-to-play had just gone way up, and we were mobile devs, and we were just like, we need out because at some point I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage and feed my children. So we were like, we need to put games out on more things because we had launched hundreds earlier that year, which couldn't be ported to anything else. Which over the years, some of them have been very funny, like show floor demos.
Oh yeah.
Like, how did you like it? I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. It's so great. I love the hipster cat, whatever. But then every once in a while, you'd get like the stoic, stone-faced person. I'm like, so how'd you like it? And like, oh, I didn't like it at all. It was just, just. I'm like, well, why? I don't like to read. And I'm like, valid.
Yeah, valid.
Yeah,
totally.
Get out.
Totally fine. People
Get
calling
out
May a
of here.
hipster was always funny to me
So
because
weird.
May, in my mind, is just like, I mean, she just got all her clothes from Walmart. Just,
The kids we grew up with.
yeah, it's like, she's got like boots and like pants.
What a hipster.
And that's about the extent of it. Like it was funny because you could kind of tell where some folks were from because they saw some guy on the street in the game walk by with a plaid, like a flannel shirt, which is something you will see in any small town in the U.S., with like a Carhartt jacket or something, and someone's like, "Oh, plaid, nice hipster stuff," and I'm like, "It's just literally what
That's just
normal
literally
people
the
wear."
Midwest.
This is
just normal.
just-
Go home.
Go anywhere
home
in
for, like, a
Appalachia,
second.
you're gonna find so many like plaid shirts and all that stuff. It's not like whatever, but they're like, "Oh, hipster."
We
The
fund
gap
rest.
between Kickstarter and finishing the game.
So Adam and I actually, so Indie Fund doesn't exactly exist the way Indie Fund used to exist. It's now Friends of Indie Fund, so it's a whole big giant group of investors, and people sort of champion games. And Adam and I had invested that in the past, but we were at a point where all of our money was sunk into development on our own projects. So Adam and I actually approached Indie Fund and took out loans on Night in the Woods' behalf. And we negotiated the terms with a group of people that we knew, which I wouldn't even say actually covered Scott and Bethany through the end of it. Had I known how close to the line they were running, I would have taken more money and like on my own personal everything. But there was some really funny stuff that happened post-launch where I was like writing letters to landlords to be like, listen, they can pay their rent. They just don't have any of their money. I promise this is not a lie. I'm also going to put you behind an NDA.
That was really our current place that we live in, which is a little place in the South Hills of Pennsylvania. Cute. It's very, very cheap by a lot of standards.
What's the address?
Everyone come over. It's Goose Day. So and when we were moving in, it was between when Night in the Woods had launched and when we had first gotten like our check-in.
Yeah, and money takes a while.
And he was like, oh, well, I need to see proof of what your income is. I'm like, estimated it's going to be, we had nothing last year, but it's going to be very big this year, and I don't know what it's going to be next year because that's how game finances work. You make nothing, and then hopefully a big spike, and then it goes back down to nothing again. And you try to make that big spike fund the next thing that you do, and that's kind of it. It's a real dumb way of doing things, but
they treat you like drug dealers.
Yeah,
from experience.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, so our landlord was like, oh yeah, well, I don't know. And I was like, no, we're gonna, and so we were like, Becca, can you write him an email or something just to be like,
a really official one. It was like
just to be like, here's the money that they're gonna get and stuff. And
I threatened him basically with legal action if he disclosed this publicly.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. And anyway, he then started treating us nicely, which was a great lesson in like, oh, this is how they treat you when they think you have money.
Yep.
And stuff. Like he would finally return our calls and stuff. So that was great. Thanks, George. And I hope he's watching this. We remember. Anyway. But he came back and he was like, oh, I read, because we had an interview in the New York Times, and he's like, you were in the New York Times. You're really well known and famous. And we're like, yeah, we make video games at home. And he's like, maybe you'll make your next one here, and it'll also be in the New York Times. And I was like, maybe we will. Can we sign our thing, please, so we can move in? So yeah, that was.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how that funding happened.
Long story on funding.
And that's how we got our current apartment.